Welcome to this MIDDVantage series, Exploring Careers in the Green Economy. This episode is The Mathematics of Distributed Energy. My name is Jay, and I'm a part of the class of 21.5 at Millbrae College. I'm excited to introduce today's guest speaker, Dylan Cutler. Dylan is a 2004 mid-grad and now works as a senior engineer at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden, Colorado. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Dylan.
Yeah, good to be here.
So, Dylan, this series explores a number of different professional areas involved in the green economy. Can you please tell us about the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and how it fits within the green economy?
Sure. Yeah, so the National Renewable Energy Lab, or I'll just refer to it as NREL, is one of the 17 Department of Energy laboratories throughout the US. And it's the only one that's specifically focused on energy efficiency and renewable energy. So that's its whole mission. It's focused on, it's in the applied side of kind of the DOE laboratories, but it does everything from basic research on, constructing solar cells or digesting plastics or, creating biofuels to, economic analyses and more kind of analysis of the electricity sector or the energy sector at large. So it's a pretty wide-ranging institution. I think it's close to 3,000 employees now, and it was closer to 2,000 when I started about 10 years ago at the lab. So it's right in the heart of kind of the sustainability and kind of evolving renewable energy space for the nation, leading a lot of kind of the foundational research that then supports industry and developing new solutions or figuring out kind of ways to get to market most effectively.
Yeah, so it sounds like it touches on a lot of different sectors and areas of the economy. So if you could please elaborate a little bit more on the organizations that it would engage with while conducting its business?
Sure. Yeah, so I think, probably 85-ish% of the funding for the lab comes directly from the Department of Energy. So, funded from the US government. A lot of those funds are competed between the different labs. We all write proposals. If you've got a great idea, you are free to kind of develop that into a proposal and submit it when funding opportunities are announced. But still, most of the funds come directly from DOE, the Department of Energy. Then there's a big chunk that comes from other federal government agencies, such as Department of Defense or USAID or a Department of State. There's a bunch of different organizations that also fund NREL to do research in different areas that support their mission or their agency. And then there's another chunk that comes from industry, private industry. So we've worked with telecom, Verizon, Nike, looking at how to reduce kind of impacts at their factories, very small businesses that want to kind of test their newest product in the laboratory. So it's a really wide-ranging kind of group of funding kind of entities, but and specifically the center I work in is much more kind of on that deployment edge. And so we are probably 50-50, where half of our funding comes from the Department of Energy and half comes from private industry or other governmental agencies.
That's really, really interesting. Are there any other organizations that do what the NREL does that are like in a similar area of the economy?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's another set of, I guess there's probably two groups that come to mind. The most kind of comparable ones are actually other national labs. So Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, Oak Ridge, Sandia. Those are some ones, Idaho National Lab. Those are ones that are kind of doing some research in similar spaces, on, grid infrastructure, renewables integration, energy efficiency, building design. So that they all have strong programs in those same areas. And so we work together a lot, and we do similar things. I think the other maybe set of organizations are, some of kind of maybe the nonprofits, such as like Rocky Mountain Institute. They're doing some of those kind of nonprofit research organizations are in a similar space where they aren't tied to a specific industry. Like, we're a very unbiased third party kind of reviewer, right? We don't really specifically care if it's wind or solar or biofuels or what technology is providing the energy. We're more interested on understanding what works, what doesn't work, what's fundamentally sound, what makes economic sense, all of those questions. But we aren't really tied to any specific either product, company, special interest. And so some of those nonprofit organizations have a similar mission, right? They're just trying to understand how to meet some of the goals we need to meet as a nation and as a globe towards decarbonization and kind of greener energy production.
Awesome. And so then in that goal of reducing our carbon impact and dependency, what do you see as the main issues or challenges in realizing your objectives?
I would put those into kind of three buckets, being technical, economic, and then policy and or regulatory issues. And so, a lot of the technical issues, we have lots of really good solutions right now. And by no means does that say we should stop innovating and, and stay put with the technologies we have. That's not really what I'm saying there. Like there's new solar cell perovskites, like a bunch of kind of new innovations on how we could generate solar electricity, cheaper at larger scale, more efficiently. There's innovations every day in that space, but we also have a lot of stuff that's ready to go. And so what I tend to focus on is more in what are the economic barriers or what are the kind of policy regulatory barriers to getting all of these solutions deployed at scale, because that's what we need right now. We don't really have a whole lot of time, in my opinion. I think we need to be moving faster than we are. So, what are the market structures that are kind of enabling lots of renewables or energy efficiency technologies? Like where are places in the country or in the world that are really successful right now in deploying these technologies, and what are they doing as far as financial incentives, market structures, all of those different kind of components, and then what are they doing as from a regulatory perspective? How are they encouraging some of these technologies to enter the grid mix? So those are kind of I think the biggest hurdles we have to face right now are accelerating the rate at which we kind of move our policy and our kind of economic structures towards valuing decarbonization and allowing kind of competition of these technologies where it makes sense.
Yeah, and so then with that challenge, what do you see as the biggest area of growth or the future of like the green economy?
So I guess I would say I think that there is a lot of growth, and this might be biased a little bit because I focus more on kind of behind the meter technology, what we call behind the meter technology. So, distributed solar that might go on your roof, or an energy storage system that goes in your garage, or kind of intelligent controls of your thermostat, things like that. That's kind of more of my research area. And so I might be a little biased, but I think there is going to be an explosion of kind of customer sited energy, generation and storage devices. So I think that's going to be a really interesting area of growth, and it leads to some challenging what I call grid integration challenges. How can the grid benefit from all of those devices instead of just having to manage a whole lot more, distributed assets. So that's one. The other one I think is energy storage. I think it is going to take off in a big way. So like electrochemical energy storage, like lithium ion batteries, like we're seeing that right now. Those costs are coming down, and they're more available and getting adopted in many places. Some places just for kind of making money economics, and then other places more for like energy resiliency. If you're concerned with grid outages, say in California, some of the rolling blackouts that are going on now. So I think that energy storage space is really going to explode and move past lithium ion potentially to other kind of longer term energy storage solutions.
Yeah, that's all really interesting to hear about the NLab as a whole. Now, would you be able to tell us more specifically your role as a senior engineer?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my role is senior research engineer, and I have been working on and leading a lot of the technical development of an optimization model called REOPT, so Renewable Energy Optimization, and working with a team of maybe 10 or 15 other engineers at the lab, developing this model into both kind of a analysis tool that we use to kind of understand better how these different distributed resources interact with the grid, and to expose a model to the larger public. So it's available as a web tool, an open what's called an application programming interface or an API, so that you could kind of use our model sitting at Middlebury and start to understand some of these questions, and as a open source project on GitHub, so you could download the whole package and spin it up on your own laptop and run it. So we both want to kind of get this out as a resource to the larger community and use it to kind of understand some of the tougher analysis questions that we have in our minds. And I lead a lot of the kind of development of the model specifically for those custom analyses. That's kind of probably most of what I do. I also lead most of the work at the lab around how blockchain technologies could support kind of more transactive energy markets. That's a whole another deep dive. I won't go too deep into that, but so those are kind of two of my main focus areas.
Awesome. And if you could maybe give us like a high level walkthrough of like how your work and other roles in your organization or outside entities, like how they all interact, like what you might do in a day in the life.
Sure. Yeah. So day in the life right now is a lot of calls like this. No, just joking. That I guess there's kind of a lot of work that's pretty technical in nature, where it's kind of head down, either with a paper and pencil, or kind of writing. I write a fair amount of code to make the model perform as desired or add features to the model. So kind of designing, architecting those new features, implementing them into the model, running the model, analyzing results. So there's a whole chunk of my work that's very, directly building off the mathematics, degree at Middlebury, very, very focused on, structuring in a mathematical form how these technologies function and how they can get value by participating in electricity markets. Then there's another big chunk that's kind of working with clients, understanding what problems they have, how they want this analysis to be performed, understanding the data that they have available for the analysis, how that fits in with the model architecture that we've developed. Having calls with them, discussing, all of those aspects and debriefing results. So there's this whole kind of interface with the client, and then there's a lot of I end up doing a lot of business development work or grant proposal writing. So what do we think is the next big important question we have to solve, and explaining how we're going to tackle that problem from kind of a technical sense, and from a teaming with outside industry to kind of be able to solve that problem most effectively for DOE or for the other clients that we work with.
Awesome. And then I know a lot of Middlebury students watching this will be interested to hear what aspects of your Middlebury experience do you find best prepared you for your work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people say, you never use anything you learn in college, and I think that couldn't be more wrong in my case. Literally today I was kind of reviewing, advanced linear algebra, theorems that help support how this optimization model runs. So, it's like what I work on every day is it's called a mixed integer linear program is how the model's formulated, and it's built on how to solve simultaneous linear equations through lots of matrix algebra, essentially, at the core. So it's very much building off of the stuff I learned in my major. And then I'd say beyond those like direct skills, there's also a lot of writing. Like we write, I publish probably 5 to 6 peer-reviewed journal articles a year, and those need to be well written and well formulated, and then a lot of other peer-reviewed technical reports that get published through NREL or DOE. So there's a lot of writing and critical thinking. Maybe that's probably the biggest one, is just kind of critical thinking and communication of results. It's not good enough, I don't think, to just have the right answer. It has to be communicated well. The story has to be told well, so that people want to hear it and listen and take action. So yeah, I think Middlebury prepares you pretty well in a bunch of those areas.
Awesome, thank you. That's all really interesting, and thank you for sharing those insights. I'm curious to hear about your own experience from campus to career. So you mentioned that you majored in mathematics. Can you please tell us the rest of your story?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little roundabout. As I think many people's are. Coming out of Middlebury, I think a lot of people hit this point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a lot of people know exactly what they want to do when they graduate. I wasn't one of them. And so, I took kind of a step back and knew I kind of want to focus in this energy efficiency space. And so, but the way I first figured out how to do it was me and actually 3 other Middlebury graduates started a residential construction business focused on energy efficient building design. So that was that was the goal. And so we started that. It was called Green Frame, and we built houses. Actually located, our shop was in Vermont. We were building kind of locally sourced timber frame homes throughout the Northeast for 6 years. Yeah, so I started and ran that business, but got to a point where I didn't feel like we were getting to do kind of the energy efficiency portion of the design that I was hoping we would be able to do. And, it was hard enough to convince people to hire a bunch of young, kind of less experienced people to build their dream home, much less than advise them on energy efficiency. So it was kind of a challenge there, and I felt like I needed to both know more and kind of have more credentials to kind of move that whole concept forward. So that took me back to grad school. I came out to CU Boulder, in their building systems engineering program and did a master's there. And during that time, joined NREL initially as an intern, and then upon graduation, ended up taking a full-time position, and that's kind of where I've been since then. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you went back to get an advanced degree. Is that common in your field? And in terms of like students thinking about their future, like what do you recommend in terms of thinking about advanced degrees?
Yeah, yeah, it's a hard question. I think there's many ways to be successful without them. In my specific area, like at a national lab, it's very, very common to have one, and almost everyone, I would say, has either a master's or a PhD. I'm probably maybe in the minority not having a PhD. That said, I think you learn a lot about how to conduct research and how to, continues this path of kind of developing your critical thinking and kind of honing that and focusing in on a topic. That said, I personally think that there are folks at the lab who have bachelor's, master's, and PhDs who all are kind of, I view as mentors, leaders, pioneers in their respective fields. And so it's kind of irrespective of their degree. A lot of this is, what do you do with your time? How do you focus and teach yourself? Because it's just a continuous education process. Like, I'm learning new things every day. That's part of the reason I love working at the lab is it really, if you don't continually educate yourself, you're not going to succeed. So I think it somewhat depends on how you come to work or come to that continuing education, more than kind of what degree you have. But I think there's lots of value if you know what you want to focus on in kind of finding a good mentor in a academic setting and moving that all forward.
Awesome. And then what do you view as having been the most important in getting your first job?
I guess I could tell just a little story about how I first started at NREL, because I think maybe there's some value in people hearing that. And it all really came down to me walking into a professor's office, in a bunch of different professors' offices, and just kind of pushing for opportunities. I would just kind of knock on their door and ask them if they had kind of different internship opportunities or different interesting kind of research work that was going on, and if I could contribute. And so one of those was the professor was like, actually, a couple folks from NREL just reached out and are looking for someone to support their research. Maybe you'd like to talk to them, and so I think sometimes all it takes is pushing a little bit harder on, or luck, I don't know, one way or the other. But continue to ask the questions and kind of put yourself out there and see what opportunities arise. And sometimes it is luck, but if you can walk into that room, at least then you're kind of increasing your chances, perhaps.
Awesome. And then that's all really interesting. And thank you for sharing your experiences. So given what you know now, what advice do you have for current students on how to best prepare themselves for entry points into the green economy?
Yeah, so I guess I would say, as far as entry points into the green economy, I think it's important to be kind of proactive on finding some foothold, some piece of that larger green economy. That's pretty all-encompassing, and it's growing every day. Finding a niche within that and searching out opportunities. Like, even at at NREL, we have these what are called SULI interns, which are undergraduate internships that are facilitated by DOE, and they get to work with an NREL mentor for the summer. So when I'm looking at resumes, for example, like seeing people who have had actual experience on some of these projects, or or there's opportunities at Middlebury to craft lots of your own kind of research projects, or thesis, if you write a thesis for your major, or you know, join. I know Middlebury participated in the solar decathlon at least for 1 year or two. Finding those opportunities and tailoring them towards a niche, a piece of that green economy that you think is important or interesting. Because I don't think it's enough, especially these days, to just say, I'm interested in decarbonization. Like, that's awesome, it's important, but there's a lot of people that are well qualified and coming out, ready to contribute. And I think the more you can show that you've got focus and kind of initiative to find an area that you're interested in and develop it for yourself, I think that's maybe the most important thing. Yeah, that's what I would suggest, I guess.
Cool. And then which skill sets would you say are the most important for students to have or to build
Mm-hmm.
during their time at Middlebury?
I'm going to be speaking a little bit from my perspective, which is in pretty technical analysis space. So I think it's important to have some programming skills. I would suggest anyone who wants to be in that more technical side of things, that data science kind of background is super helpful, and it's easier and easier to kind of access. There's courses online. Obviously, Middlebury has a ton, but you can kind of do all these little self-taught, things, these little boot camps to kind of bring you up a level as far as some of that kind of just general data, rapid data analysis with scripting. I think good writing, technical writing, is a huge asset and a huge skill. I think that public speaking and communication of results is really important. So, and I think you get a lot of exposure there with Middlebury. I think it's, part of the benefits of being a small university or a small college. You have small class sizes, you're forced to kind of participate more, right? And I would count that as public speaking. Just getting up among your colleagues or your professors and kind of voicing your thoughts and your opinions is, I think, important. You should be a vocal person without, being overbearing, but a vocal kind of participant in your group or in your organization. So those are a few that I would say are really valuable.
All right. Well, Dylan, thank you again for your engagement and helping us students prepare for our first entry into the green economy.
Yeah, I hope more of you join. We need more smart people to make this all happen.
All right. Well, this concludes this episode within the series, Exploring Careers in the Green Economy. I want to encourage viewers to tune in to get careers perspectives and advice from other professionals in a broad variety of organizations in other episodes of this series. I also want to encourage you to tune into other MIDDVantage series, which can be accessed through the Events and Programs tab on the CCI website. Thanks again for watching.